Hey.
What's up, guys?
Not much.
Thanks for doing this. Okay, you know the first question. Actually, hand the mic to Chris. He needs to know this.
Perfect. That's what we were planning on.
He needs to know this.
Praise the Lord.
Chris, how long you been married?
No, this is easy. This is easy because we got married in 2010, so I cheated.
Oh, that's cheating.
Yeah.
That's kind of cheating.
So 12 years, but we've actually been together for almost 20 years. So,
wow.
Yeah, if we need more street cred.
And 3 kids under...
Yeah.
6 and under.
At one point, it was 4 and under. So we'll just keep getting that credibility.
Nice. Well, you guys have certainly a unique perspective based on how long you've been together, the age of your children. What's been working for you guys? What are some helpful things that have helped keep your marriage healthy and thriving and moving? What would you say?
Yeah, couple of things stand out, and just to preface, I feel so ill-equipped to speak to anyone because I feel like I am not at all good at what I do in marriage. So this has been something that's been intimidating me for months. I may have backed out last week just to avoid this and push it back another week. But as I thought about it, I thought, what a great opportunity to speak to the things that I've done poorly and to share some of that in hopes that it'll encourage somebody who might be facing the same thing. And there's 2 things that stand out to me in particular. The first would be very simple, or it seems simple, and the tip would be to pursue proximity. When it comes to marriage, we know that we're looking to pursue nearness, but early on in your marriage, it can be easy. You have a lot of time, kids aren't in the way, you can clear your schedule on a moment's notice and go do something fun, and so the first couple of years of marriage, it was kind of like that for us. And then kids happen, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, they've spoiled all the fun. And all of a sudden I have to be a big boy and put a schedule together and be intentional and actually be a leader. And those are things I'm not naturally good at. And one of the things that I've found to be really helpful is for us to have some non-negotiables and for us to have some weekly rhythms. I remember a couple years ago I talked to Pastor Dan and was trying to figure out, what's the magic number of minutes for quality time with my wife? Is there a specific window we're looking for? Like, is it 2 hours a day? Is it 2 hours a week? Like, how do we make this happen? And one of the things in our conversation that he shared was, what if you send Emily a text message every day to check in? What would that look like in terms of meaningfulness? And it seemed like so insignificant at the time, but such an easy win. And I don't know if you even know that I've done this on purpose, but at 2 o'clock I get a reminder every day to send you a text message. Some days I disregard it, or if I'm on a phone call for work, it doesn't happen. But just that checking in when we were both working full-time was super helpful because we're both in the middle of our job, and it's difficult to remember just to check in. And you may not be able to be close in person, but you can be close via text message. Another thing that I think has really been helpful as kids have been inserted into the equation is being intentional with just driving in the car. It seems like kind of a no-brainer on that one too, but we kind of stumbled into it where kids got to take a nap, but we still want to see each other, and for whatever reason, when we're all at home together, nobody takes a nap. So stick them all in the back of the car. We'll go drive around and go to a neighborhood we've never seen and critique their landscape or, whatever the case might be that's interesting. And usually it leaves us super thankful. We're like, oh, wow, our house is really nice. And we get to thank God together. So those are 2 things I think that are really helpful in that proximity element. And then the second thing that I'm really still learning is praise publicly, which it seems like praise would be words of affirmation publicly, and that is part of it. One of the things I've been really poor at right from the beginning of our marriage is I have a very close friend group, and Emily was kind of like the third wheel with all the other wives, there was this group of boys that has known each other for so long, and we hang out together, we're laughing it up, and talking about the good old days, which has got to be super annoying to be on the outside of. And it was a point of conflict for us for quite some time, because I would say, okay, Emily's going to be great. She's social. She's, very capable, competent to hold a conversation on her own. I'm going to go have fun with the boys while she goes and talks to the other wives who are sitting around like we don't know each other. And what are we doing here while the boys have a great time? And one of the things that I've been learning is it's not just me saying nice things about Emily publicly, that's part of it, but it's also how I interact with Emily in public. So not just in that friend group, but in general. Am I keeping Emily as my most special guest whenever she's with unfamiliar people? Where, if you think about a husband who really truly loves his wife is right there, and he's got his arm around her, and he's so proud. And I've always been proud of Emily, but I've always been very selfish with my time, where I've wanted to, go and have time with the boys, and that's fine to do that. But if your spouse is there, you don't want them to be left out. And so I think that's been a big learning point for me is, all right, how can I include my spouse? And if I really look at the root cause of all of it, I think a lot of it has to do with me being intimidated by my spouse. Anybody that knows Emily knows she's super intelligent. She is super praiseworthy in her accomplishments, not only at work, but at home. And I hear that a lot. And it's difficult for me to not be the center of attention. There's this thing on social media that I've seen pushed around, and it's like there's two people in a relationship. There's the fun one, and there's the boring one. And she's really fun, so I've been intimidated, like, man, I guess I got to be the boring one. And I think just allowing yourself to have permission to know that you don't have to be one or the other. God's created you each as individuals, as complementary pieces in your marriage towards each other. And one of the things I've shied away on for a long time is I have a wife who's been accomplished in every setting she's been in. And she is often looked at before I am for positions of influence, or she's asked to do things that I've never been asked to do. We used to work at Old Navy together. She was a key holder. They trusted her with money, and they never trusted me. And so that was like the start of the issue with my lack of self-confidence. But what a compliment to me that she chose to be with me and she stuck by me. And so we've saved the best for last. Emily's got something that's far more meaningful to share.
That's a level of humility that we don't often see up here, right? Thanks for that, Chris, though, because that really brings the sort of everyman level, and I think we can really relate to that. So thanks. How about you, Em?
Well, Christian just talked about how great I am, so now I'm going to talk about how awful I am. Just balance it out a little bit. Preparing for this today, I take a lot of notes, so you might always see me with the notebook. And I reference them all the time. My pea brain cannot digest things in one sitting. So probably about, I think it was 4.5 years ago, there was a marriage conference here, the Paul Tripp Marriage Conference. And so we attended that. And I took a lot of notes because it was awesome. If you have ever done any Paul Tripp content, it's fantastic. So I'm still digesting it to this day. I'm still chewing on that same cud. As nasty as that sounds, that's what's happening. It keeps coming back, and I still sucking something out of it. And so I reference those notes all the time because there's a lot in there that spoke to me that was super relevant, and there's one quote that he said that sticks with me about marriage and about parenting. It's, if your eyes see or your ears hear the sin, weakness, or failure of your spouse, it's never an accident, it's never interruption, it's never a hassle, it's always grace. And I thought to myself, wow, that's really good. I'm writing that down verbatim and memorizing it, which I have because you just heard me do it. But then at one point I was like, okay, so what does that mean? what does it really mean, grace in marriage? What does it look like to have grace in marriage? So when you think about that, the first thing probably everyone thinks about is, grace is forgiveness, right? Of course. And I'm really bad at that. Okay, so like the whole Ephesians 4 principles of being, kind with your words, humble with them, speaking the truth in love. And, Christian can attest to this. We were just talking about this yesterday. I'm not good at it. My tone there's always something about it that's not kind. When I'm feeling offended, I don't use kind tone or words. And so I said, this is it. This is what I need to focus on. And so I started doing that, and I started trying to be this facilitator of a pattern of confession and forgiveness in my marriage. So that, that's my role. I'm going to help my husband see his brokenness so that he can grieve it, confess it, and change. And I said, there we go. This is it. This is the fix that I've been waiting for. And so I did it, and it was failing miserably. He was feeling attacked, disrespected. I was constantly feeling hurt. Like, why are we doing this again? I'm just this constant, ringleader of this process that's going on. Why am I feeling so hurt? So then I realized at one point, as I went back through those notes, I kind of missed an entire session on the kingdom of self versus the kingdom of God. And I kind of thought to myself, well, now what does this mean? This is way too complicated. So that's why it's taken me so long, 12 years of marriage. I still don't have this down, and it's a daily battle, probably will be for the rest of my life. But when you think about grace, so there's this grace of forgiveness that God has for us, therefore we have for each other. But it has to be at the same time, there's also a grace of deliverance. God has freed me from living for the kingdom of self, and I can abandon my own agenda in every aspect. And that was what I was not doing. Pastor Dan spoke on marriage in May of this year, and he did a really nice job illustrating this in a way that I hadn't thought of before. He talked about a self-centered focus is a poison to marriage. And I said, I'm poisoning grace in my marriage because of my self-centered focus. I'm always concerned with how you hurt me, how you wounded me. Pastor Dan spoke on a constant focus on my woundedness and my happiness. And that's the problem then with the grace. It's not the grace that's the problem, it's me problem and the focus that I have. So I'm battling with that all the time as, not just in marriage, but in life. Not having that self-centered focus. I think during his message, Pastor Dan said something that was really interesting. He was talking about divorce research when he was speaking about that. And he said, self-centeredness responded to by self-centeredness ended the marriages every single time. So that is how much of a poison it is you can kind of look at divorce, people who are divorced, and what happened, and self-centeredness is always at the center and at the root of it. And it's just our broken human nature to do that. But I think getting in a pattern of praying, as often as I remember, that God, please, would you shape in me a heart that is ready and willing to abandon my own agenda for your greater plan, and to not be offended when my husband does something and fails me or whatever, because we're all broken people, we'll do that. Not to be offended that it hurts me, but to be offended by it because this is not what God has for my husband. That's why it hurts. It doesn't just sting me. I mean, it certainly does, and we can talk about that. But if the focus is on that, it's going to be a poison. And so don't poison grace in your marriage by making it about you. Having that self-centered focus is been an issue, and I'm hopeful and prayerful that God continue to work in me to have that be opposite in how I respond.
Cool. That's so good. And I don't think it's any wonder, right? It's not a mystery that the same things that unlock our relationship with God are the things that unlock a healthy marriage, right? This pattern, this rhythm of humility and then confession, and then God's faithful to forgive and then give grace. Like, you can see that, right? You can see how our marriages are meant to point to the perfect example of that, right? Our marriages a signpost almost. So I love that. That's so. Thank you so much, and I'm going to stop before this mic explodes. Thanks so much. Let's give these guys a hand.